Your man with a plan to interrupt the plans of a man, and this is PNN News, and I am somebody. Although this is my own personal I am statement, I'll be comparing some of the similarities between myself and Luis Góngora Pat, including feeling like a complete alien in spite of being born and raised in the so-called Americas. Him in Mexico, me in the United States. One of my biggest struggles my whole life has been always feeling out of place with everyone, including my own family. I generally never wanted to be around very many people most of my life. The older I get, the more I have started to enjoy my own company more than anybody else's because, after all, better alone than in bad company. Mostly, I just want to be left alone. It's not that I'm completely antisocial. I enjoy some social interaction, but the more time people spend around in talking to one another, the chances increase of somebody saying something stupid, and if at all possible, I like to avoid being the one. I think my feelings stem from being the youngest of 7. The age difference between myself and my siblings ranged from 3 to 17 years. I grew up in Boston in 1963. I think part of my feelings are also the result of being sent to school with mostly white students who, for some reason, I thought were all rich. I moved to San Francisco after spending 13 years in Atlanta. The first few years were prosperous. The last few, I was homeless and living on the streets. I moved here in 2004, the year I survived 2 attempts on my life. The first was in early May. The second was the day before Thanksgiving. I know what feeling desperate and being in absolute despair is, and I'm sure I came close, but probably didn't experience the same way in the last few moments of Luis Góngora Pat's life. In May 2004, I sustained a severe head injury. I woke up in a pool of my own blood, dazed and confused. I was later told I was hit from behind with a large propane tank, the kind that's used on a barbecue grill. My total injuries resulted in multiple staples in the front and back of my scalp, along with a fractured eye socket. Luis Góngora Pat didn't survive the head trauma as a result of a bullet entering one part of his skull and exiting another. Dead in less than 30 seconds of a police encounter that had to be quite confusing, being that he didn't understand English and barely understood Spanish. I can relate to that. English being my primary language, I'm often around people who speak other languages I don't understand. More often than not, it's Spanish. After being evicted myself, I camped out about 2 blocks on the opposite end of Shotwell Street, the same street that Luis died on. Several years prior to that, the police barged into the SRO I resided in while aiming a shotgun at my head. I had just finished a nice steak dinner in the tenants' lounge, and they somehow wanted to make me believe or understand that it was okay for them to point a shotgun at my head because they had just received a call that somebody had been brandishing a knife in the building. The plate and fork didn't seem to be enough evidence that I had been eating. I'm sure that was the same situation with Luis. When I first wrote about Luis, shortly after he had been murdered in April 2016, I was writing a story about being profiled by a news team who assumed that I was homeless because I was carrying laundry and groceries, and presumably the way I was dressed. I included Luis in that story because just as I acknowledged it then, I also acknowledge it now. I was one of the lucky ones. This has been PNN News. I am Brother Y. I am still somebody. And so is Luis Góngora Pat. Although the light of his earthly body was snuffed out, he lives on as a martyr in the spirit of resistance.